Welcome everyone to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with key influencers, CDOs, and data leaders. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President of Sandhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working with the CDO Magazine. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Julie Smith, who is the Director of Data and Analytics at Alation. As a bit of a background, Julie has been in the data industry for over 30 years and started her career in the early 90s as a senior information analyst at Royal & Son. Julie has seen firsthand how the industry has transformed over these past 3 decades. And as a woman in the traditionally male-dominated tech industry, has also seen how the attitudes in the industry have evolved to the extent where she now heads data for one of the world's leading data intelligence providers. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for extending some of your time to do this interview. Julie, jumping right in, how do you envision the role of the data professional that has evolved and is expected to evolve in the next few years?
Yeah, whenever people do my introductions like that, I'm reminded about exactly how long I've been at this and therefore how much history of the industry I'm actually been witness to. So when I started my career so many years ago, I started out in IT. It was data was something that came from the IT, the technical function, and something that appealed to me even back then was the fact that I was, by moving into sort of this data realms and business intelligence as it was in the early days, that we were combining this technical ability with business knowledge and trying to understand the business drivers, etc. And I think that dynamic, that move across and the recognition that actually this isn't an IT function, this is something that is a function in its own right, and that has this cross-functional role in it is technical, but it has to be driven by the business. And we're seeing much more involvement from the business with this, more senior leaders, the CDOs and similar. I'm seeing many more coming from commercial backgrounds into this. So we've got customers, for example, and there's one who I've met at our user conference recently. He was absolutely rocking it as a CDO, and he was chief counsel. We've got someone who was a retail store manager, as head of governance. And what they're really helping promote, I think, is this understanding that in order to get the business to use data, they need to be in the heads of the people in the business and understand the challenges and the drivers and get that commercial understanding of what benefits and outcomes are going to come from this. So I see that as a trend and something that's been happening and will happen more, I think. Also, the practitioners from a data perspective are becoming more hybrid. So they're not purely technical people. They have to, the best ones are really understanding the business. And there's always been that sort of trend of people who are in the business who are sort of quite data savvy, moving over into the more technical roles. Well, I think we're seeing some data people going native into business roles now as well, and those sorts of things too. So, I'd love to see data as a skill and data use become more of a day-to-day thing for any business person. That's the dream, really. Is it's less of us known as a separate skill and more as something everybody has.
We'll definitely see that in the future, and certainly I think when we talk about data literacy a little bit later on, that'll be key to have the role of the data advocate becoming more centralized in the organization. But if you were to say, so having seen, and we see this all the time, there's a major influence from the business side coming into the technical side. Where would you see, if you look at your magic crystal ball, how do you see this evolving over the next few years as well for the data professional?
So again, it merging through and more commercial background in there. I think that those business outcomes that we need to see, we need to have the full understanding around that and the art of the possible for how we can take this data forward. And of course, there's there's other areas that are going to develop new roles. There's those 2 letters that have taken on such a significance recently in our lives. Yes, AI. I'm obviously referring to that, and we're already seeing job titles evolve with the how significant this has become. And I think that's another area where now that's got a foothold, we're going to see more dedicated roles to that within an org. But I think there's still time to see how that evolves, how that shapes up. I think we're still feeling our way with it out there in the industry.
Such a relatively new industry within our space that things are fluid. We're living in a very fluid time with roles and responsibilities, things like that. If I can maybe just expand upon this and get again your experience from where you've been and sort of as a potential indicator of where things are going, especially in the organization that you work with. When you sort of chat with data professionals, what do you think and you mentioned the AI, but what do you think are some of the latest technologies that individuals need to keep up with from your point of view?
So a technology perspective, I mean, obviously there is the AI side of it and the large language models. I think that, sometimes I feel that a skill I almost need to develop is speed reading, to be able to keep up with so much happening out there and the other types of things we have. I mean, I think that something that I feel, I went to Big Data London this year, sort of a massive conference, and I'll be honest, several of us were walking around the different stalls and looking at the vendors that were all there. A lot of them, you didn't actually know what you had to stand there and you'd read their stall and you'd look at the information on the side and you'd look at how inventive the people had been to get those 2 letters stuck somewhere in the stall. And you'd be none the wiser as to what actually they were actually helping you with. So I think part of the problem we have at the moment with technologies is actually seeing the wood for the trees and understanding what is going to be important, what is going to move things along. I think data observability is getting more of a foothold. And that's really an evolution I see of the whole, the quality and the understanding of what's the throughput is there. And I think that, if I did have a crystal ball and I could predict what the next hype cycle was going to be on, then I'd be
working for Gartner or something like
I'd be working for Gartner, absolutely, on there. But they're the areas I see. I think that something that I am cautious about, though, is there is a lot of hype around stuff at times, and it's you have to try and take a step back and think, is this a serious proposition that we're seeing here? Is this something that is actually going to take hold and be something going forward? I mean, I quite like the Gartner hype cycles and looking at those.
It is. For people who haven't seen it, it's a very interesting
it is
strategy of how things will go really high in the hype and then it'll tailor off like big data, for example.
Yeah, and others too. And if you look for example, at where data mesh, where they place data mesh now, it's like, that's a bit alarming compared to where people felt it was going to be. So, there's so much happening, and I think that sometimes, when these new technologies come out, there's a tendency for people to go, "Oh, we need to use this. Let's start using it," and it's a solution looking for a problem. And I think that can be dangerous to try and do that. And
I totally agree with you. Going back to the fundamentals, you mentioned that the business side, the business-driven outcomes, outcomes will drive you towards solutions that are available in the marketplace or are coming in the marketplace today.
Yeah,
so I think that I do like the fact that you mentioned these AI technologies, data observability, but driven towards business outcomes. Like, what are you trying
absolutely.
to do?
Absolutely. And I've been in places before now where someone, the one that really sticks in my mind from years ago was when I was in consultancy, and there was a customer who had Oracle, and they're like, we're going to be using materialized views. And we're like, why are you using materialized views? Well, they're new.
Yeah, just
But
because it
why?
doesn't mean, that's actually the most important question that anyone needs to ask is why. Why do we need to
Yeah.
do it? If you can explain and we can have a good path
Yeah.
forward and a good explanation,
Yeah.
then we
Yeah.
can go ahead and do that. But
Yeah. And you don't want the answer to be, well, because they're doing it.
yeah, or
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because
You
the
want to
CEO
have a
says, right?
solid thing on that. And I think that if you talk about the skills that people need going forward and similar, something that I mean, it doesn't keep me up at night, but is a concern at times is, that these sparkling new innovations are coming through, but the basics about how to treat data, how to respect data, how to manage data, and the skills around that,
Right.
kind of fade into the background. And you're like, but they're the foundations. They're the things that we should be really looking to make sure that we have, and we shouldn't get carried away with all of this. I mean, it's a bit like with the AI and the, what does the AI actually feed on? Well, it feeds on data.
Data and good quality data, which is another one of our questions that we want to get into. So, Julie, we could spend all day talking about the skill sets, but let me try and get the next question in, which was, from, again, your experience in working on intelligent platforms, and we want to leverage what you've been doing, what your organization's been doing. From your point of view, how would organizations go about achieving a solid foundation for AI tools that we just mentioned?
Yeah, I think that it's, some things have changed a lot in our industry, a lot of things that haven't changed. And one of those is and cliche or not, yes. Rubbish in, rubbish out. Yeah. And, you want to have that solid data foundation in terms of, the governance around it, the definitions of what's going in there, the data quality and understanding the provenance of the data, right, and any possible data biases that are in there. Now, obviously, there's a huge breadth of possible AI models that could be done on there, and those challenges will vary with each. But that is the foundation you need, is understanding that. When I have experienced, many different personalities and characters in my time, and there's those out there who are so keen to use the data, they don't necessarily ask the question of where did this come from,
right.
And and how has it been processed, and is it actually doing what I think it's doing? And it's what am I putting in place there? So we need to make sure that, again, those basic principles of getting that data right aren't ignored just because we've got something sparkly that's going to give us exciting insights that we feel.
And Julie, it's quite interesting to hear that, coming from a data platform, an intelligent platform such as Alation, that you're advocating that it's the foundations. If you don't build on a solid foundation, then you're building on a very shaky environment. You could be building on sand, and what happens when you build on sand, right?
Yeah. So this is why, this is one of the reasons. Before I came to Alation, I bought Alation. I was a customer. And one of the reasons we wanted it was because we needed to understand what our data was that was out there. I joined a company and spoke to the engineering team back then and said, need to, your systems, have you got a schema diagram? Well, you can reverse engineer one. Have you got a data dictionary? Well, we know what it is.
Yeah, it's in Excel. It's all
we've got all this stuff. Well, what's the quality like? Not bad. It's all of this and having it, that area that people talk about, a single version of the truth, but having a single place that you can go to understand what that data is, and to find that single version of the truth out there, in terms of the data intelligence platform. So, I think that you got to get your foundations right, and the purpose around AI and what you're trying to achieve with it. I'd say always start small and don't try and answer the question to the life, the universe, and everything in one fell swoop. Let's try and build towards that.
Right. For those that are technical nerds, the answer is not 42. Get over it and let's move on, right? So, but let me just ask you, when we talk about a little bit about AI and we talk about data quality, right? From your point of view, what are the potential issues that you see businesses that are trying to adopt AI models that are reliant on such issues such as poor data quality? What are you seeing, and how can they maybe rectify that?
Well, I think that sometimes there can be a tendency within the data organization that if taking it away from AI, taking it back to something maybe more people are familiar with, you give someone a dashboard and they look at that dashboard and they trust that dashboard because, well, it's a dashboard and it looks good. It's got, animations and I flick this switch and it moves. If, there's this sense that if it looks good, it must be right. So something being dressed up in an AI model or generating these results, it could go one of two ways, but the danger is people just trust it blindly and follow that and say, no, that's the result it's coming out with, and I'm going to believe that without worrying too much about what's under the hood, what's feeding this. Because the reality is, if it's given bad data, it can give bad results. And, there's real circumstances that have been faced, and there's been news reports, earlier this year in the UK around this, of people who livelihoods, reputations have been absolutely ruined in a way that we can't possibly comprehend due to computer systems being trusted above their word and above other things happening.
Their apparent station. On behalf of the CDO Magazine, we appreciate you giving your time. It is a little bit late in the evening there. We definitely appreciate you giving the time. We hope we get the chance to come back and have a chat, because it was very, very interesting to hear your experience and have you share that experience, especially as organizations continue to harness artificial intelligence for the betterment of organizations around the world.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
For our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.